One of the goals on my impossible list is to visit all 50 states in the US. I recently heard a statistic on one of my favorite travel podcasts, Extra Pack of Peanuts, that said that only 2% of all Americans have visited all 50 states. I want to be part of that statistic. So, one of my New Year's resolutions for 2023 was to visit 5 new to me states, and I started off the year strong with a visit to Albuquerque, New Mexico, the beginning of January. Doing research for this trip wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I mean, New Mexico is not that far away from Utah. They're both 2 of the 4 states in the Four Corners National Monument, and it's just like a quick flight or drive away from Salt Lake City. But it was so tough to find good information about what to do when you visit Albuquerque, New Mexico. Plus, the few videos that I did find on YouTube from other solo female travelers highlighted mainly their sponsored hotel and Insta-worthy spots around Albuquerque. Didn't light my fire. So instead of just complaining about the lack of options on YouTube, I decided to record my own video for those of you who want to visit Albuquerque, New Mexico and are interested in adventures, culture, and having delicious food experiences, like me. So here are 8 things to do in Albuquerque. These are the top ones that I think about the most. These are the ones that really lit my fire, and these are the ones that I will always remember when I start talking about my trip to Albuquerque, New Mexico. All right, number 1 is you want to actually get out of Albuquerque. One of the best parts about visiting a new place is actually taking a road trip away from it. So when you're in Albuquerque, I recommend that you rent a car and get out of town. You can either head north to Santa Fe or you can head south to the town of Las Cruces. I love a good road trip, and with Santa Fe only an hour north of Albuquerque, that's where I decided to go. Plus, it's the state capital. A couple of the things that I did was I stopped at the Cacao Chocolate House. Cacao is an Olmec word that means cacao. It's a specialty chocolate company that focuses on pre-Columbian, Mesoamerican, Aztec, and Mayan chocolate drinking elixirs that date back all the way to like 1000 BCE. I did a tasting flight of 4 different chocolate elixirs, and I bought a ton of caramels and truffles to take home. My favorites were the prickly pear and the goat cheese and sage truffles, which happened to be their specialty. A couple other things that I did was I visited the oldest house in Santa Fe, and I checked out the Cathedral Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi. Okay, the next thing that you need to do is go visit the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center and Kitchen. Trust me on this. Although I have my degree in history and I love learning about the history of people and cultures, I don't like museums. I never have. I get super bored when I get shuffled from artifact to artifact and have to read those little plaques. It's just not for me. But the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center made me fall in love with it the moment that I walked in. The Indian Pueblo Cultural Center is like an interactive museum where you can learn about the 19 different pueblos or villages of indigenous people that make up the state of New Mexico, and it is so cool. Sure, there are, things in glass, little plaques that you can read, but there's also a full-sized kitchen that you can walk into and see how people used to cook. And there's also like part of an adobe house in there that you can walk into. Plus there's stuff that you can touch, stuff that you can listen to. Even if you're not interested in visiting the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center, you can still come to the kitchen, which is just a typical restaurant, but it serves traditional New Mexican food with local indigenous ingredients, and it is so good, and it's such a local experience. The next adventure is to ride the Sandia Peak tramway. I love getting a bird's eye view of every new town that I visit, and going to the top of the Sandia Peak was perfect. Sandia Peak is a mountaintop on the Sandia Reservation that is just outside the town of Albuquerque. You can ride a gondola up to the top at over 10,000 feet in elevation and get sweeping views of the town of Albuquerque. There's also a restaurant at the top, there's tons of viewpoints, and I also saw a ton of people coming back from snowshoeing. When the weather permits, you can also ski up there. I was not really prepared for the cold and decided to wear my Tevas, so by the end of the day, my toes were in so much pain that I couldn't believe it. The views from the top were absolutely spectacular, but if you don't want to spend the $29 to ride the gondola, you can actually get a really good viewpoint just from the parking lot at the bottom of the mountain. The next thing to do is to wander around Old Town Albuquerque. Old Town Albuquerque is a huge draw for visitors and locals alike. There are tons of shops that will make any shopaholic cry, but for those of us who aren't really into shopping, there's still a ton to do, like people watching, checking out the local historical points of interest, and taking all the pictures. And honestly, my last few hours in Albuquerque before I caught my flight back home was just sitting on a park bench in the center of Old Town and just watching everybody walking their dogs, watching the locals come and do their shopping, watching the tourists take all their pictures, and watching the cutest local car club cruising around in their refurbished classic cars. It had all the feelings of that quintessential hometown, small town vibe, and it seemed to be the place to be on a Sunday afternoon. The next thing that you have to do in Albuquerque is cruise down Route 66. The old Route 66 ran 18 miles through the center of Albuquerque. You can cruise along Central Avenue and pass by markers that indicate the old route and some neon signs along the way. There wasn't a ton of neon like I expected there to be, like from the movie Cars, but it was still really cool to see some neon, and it kind of brought back all those old school memories. Part of the route runs through downtown Albuquerque, and if you're lucky, you might see some classic cars dragging down the street. I rented my car through the app Turo, which I highly recommend you do, but if you're in Albuquerque and you don't want to rent a car, you can actually ride a bus down Central Avenue and still get that feeling and still see a bunch of neon and a bunch of historical markers indicating that that was Route 66. The next thing you need to do is visit Petroglyph National Monument. Now, if I'm going to be completely honest, this was something that I was not super excited to do, but I'm so glad that I did, and now I will sing its praises on every rooftop. You need to go to Petroglyph National Monument. You don't even have to leave the town of Albuquerque. It's literally within the city limits. The Petroglyph National Monument is a 17-mile stretch of land that protects one of the largest petroglyph sites in North America. And it features designs and symbols that are carved into volcanic rocks by Native Americans and Spanish settlers 400 to 700 years ago. What? As a historian, I recognize the significance that this is. These symbols and images are valuable records of cultural expression and hold profound spiritual significance for contemporary natives and for the descendants of those early Spanish settlers. The monument is spread out with different trails and different trailheads leading you to different areas, with a visitor center kind of in the center of it all, but not really connected to any trails. The next thing you need to do is go to the Albuquerque International Balloon Museum. Yeah, there's a museum about hot air balloons. If you want your hot air balloon fix and you're not visiting in October when the International Balloon Festival is happening, and if you don't want to shell out over $200 for your own private balloon ride, you can get your fix at the Balloon Museum. It is so amazing. I was blown away as soon as I walked in, total pun intended. I actually wasn't gonna visit this place because I was like, I don't want to go see like a bunch of balloons like pinned up against the wall, but I had some time to kill the day that I left. I did a little bit of research, found out that it was free, and was like, might as well go check it out. I spent 2 hours in this museum. You can learn about the history of hot air balloons, how they came to be, how they were used during wartime, how they were used for exploration, talk about the true adventure, and you find out how the hot air balloon became this part of Albuquerque's identity. The last thing that you need to do, and hopefully this is something that you're doing the entire time you're in Albuquerque and not just a one-time thing, but you need to find out if you are team red or team green. Not gonna lie, one of the adventures that I was looking forward to the most was a culinary one and finding out which team I belong to. Turns out, I'm team Christmas. Let me explain. New Mexico is known as the chili capital of the world, and chilies have been grown in New Mexico for at least 400 years of recorded history. According to several accounts, the chili was introduced to New Mexico by the conquistador Don Juan Onate in the late 1500s. I mean, the actual date is kind of irrelevant at this point, but the late 1500s, early 1600s, when he brought crops from Mexico. So whenever you visit a New Mexican restaurant, you will be asked red or green. They're asking you what kind of chili you want on your food, not if you want it, because they assume that you're going to have it. I had a lot of fun going around to restaurants in Albuquerque and Santa Fe and expanding my spice palette. It's going to come as a surprise to pretty much everyone watching this, but one of my favorite comfort foods is actually a chile relleno. And this stems back to when I was in middle school and I went to a friend's house and her mom, who was from Mexico, made them for me. And not to be overdramatic, but I fell in love at first bite. So chile relleno is basically a poblano chili that's stuffed with cheese and sometimes meat. It's battered and then fried and then smothered. So when I was in New Mexico, I had chile relleno basically every day, sometimes with red, sometimes with green chili. Eventually, I decided I was team Christmas, where I had a little bit of red and a little bit of green. Mix that love together. Mwah! Okay, so now that I'm drooling thinking about the chile rellenos that I ate in New Mexico, I hope that this video helps you plan your trip to New Mexico. Adventure is never far away, especially when you visit places that aren't super overrun with tourists. You just need to know where to find it, and I hope that this video helps. We'll see you on the next adventure.